Okay, this is the answer key for the lesson 9-6 worksheet number 2. And we're going to start by using that quadratic formula. So we've got A is 4, B is 8, and C is 4. So x equals negative 8 plus or minus, right, the opposite of B, plus or minus B squared. So 8 squared minus 4 times A, which is 4, times C, which is 4. All divided by 2 times A, or 2 times 4. All right, so inside the square root here, I'm going to go ahead and type 8 squared minus 4 times 4 times 4. Okay, so inside right here, so all I did was type this in my calculator. So inside I have x equals negative 8 plus or minus the square root of 0 and divided by 8. Now the square root of 0 just goes away. So really what I just have left over right here is negative 8 divided by negative 8. So x equals, technically it's negative 8 divided by 8, which is going to give us a negative 1. Okay, number 2, again, it's already set equal to 0. That's looking great. So I've got A is 8, B is 10, and C is 11. All right, so x equals negative B, or the opposite of B, so negative 10, B squared, so 10 squared, minus 4 times A, which is 8, times C, which is 11. All divided by 2A, or 2 times 8. All right, so now I'm going to go ahead and put this in my calculator. So I've got 10 squared minus 4 times 8 times 11. All right, and when I do that, I end up with x equals negative 10 plus or minus the square root of negative 252 divided by 16. All right, so now on this one, again, once you get a negative on the inside your square root, that cannot happen, so you get a no solution here. Okay, on this guy, it's already set equal to 0 as well, so on this one, I've got A, B, and C. Okay, and when I'm looking here, x equals the opposite of B, so it'll be negative 3 plus or minus B squared, 3 squared, minus 4 times A, which is 1, C, which is negative 28, all over 2 times A, or 2 times 1. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and type this into my calculator. So we've got 3 squared minus 4 times 1 times negative 28. And when I do that, I get x equals negative 3 plus or minus the square root of 121 divided by 2. All right, the 121, the square root of 121 is 11, so I have negative 3 plus or minus 11 divided by 2. Now I'll break it up into my two parts. So I've got negative 3 plus 11 divided by 2, and I've got negative 3 minus 11 divided by 2. All right, so on this guy, negative 3 plus 11 is 8, divided by 2 is 4. On the second guy here, negative 3 minus 11 is negative 14, divided by 2, and that gives me negative 7. Okay, on the next guy here, all right, we need to set equal to 0, so I'm going to go ahead and move my 42 right to here. So I'm going to get 4x squared minus 2x minus 42 equals 0. So x equals the opposite of b will be positive 2, plus or minus, oh, maybe I should go back. So a is 4, right? B is negative 2, and c is negative 42. And so now on the inside here, I've got b squared, so negative 2 squared, minus 4 times a, which is 4, times c, which is negative 42. All divided by 2 times 4, or 2a. Okay, so again, I'm going to go ahead and work this inside right here. So I get negative 2 squared minus 4 times negative 42. Okay, so on the inside here, I get x equals 2 plus or minus the square root of 676 divided by 8. All right, so now I'm going to take the square root of 676 in my calculator, and I got 26. So x equals 2 plus or minus 26 divided by 8. So when I do that, I'm going to get 2 plus 26, divide it by 8, and 2 minus 26, and divide that by 8. So 2 plus 26 is 28, divide by 8, and I ended up with 3.5. So on this one, 2 minus 26 is negative 24. Divide that by 8 and you get negative 3. Okay. All right, going to the next page here, number 5. Again, make sure we set it equal to 0. Now make sure that when you do that, that this guy is being moved over into the middle. So you're going to add an 8r over to this side. So you're going to get 2r squared plus 8r minus 15 equals 0. A is 2, B is 8, and C is negative 15. So now I've got x equals the opposite of b, so it'll be negative 8 plus or minus b squared, so 8 squared, minus 4 times a times c, all over 2 times 2, or 2 times a. All right, so now I'm going to go ahead and type in the inside here. So I've got 8 squared minus 4 times 2 times negative 15. And so when I do that, I get x equals negative 8 plus or minus the square root of 184 divided by 4. So now the square root of 184, and remember, if you get a crazy answer there with a square root, push that double arrow, and when you round it off, you should get 13.6 rounded off. Divide by 4. All right, so now let's go ahead and break it up. So I've got x equals negative 8 plus 13.6, divide that by 4, and x equals negative 8 minus 13.6, and divide that by 4. So negative 8 plus 13.6 ends up being 5.6, and now we're going to divide that by 4 and end up with x equals 1.4. Okay, over here I've got negative 8 minus 13.6, so I end up with negative 21.6, and then I'm going to divide that by 4, and x equals negative 5.4. Okay, all right. Okay, so on this one, the b in the middle is missing, so 1 is your a value. Your b value will be 0 here because it's missing, and then negative 1 will be your c value. Okay, so x equals the opposite of b. Well, the opposite of 0 is still just going to be 0, plus or minus 0 squared minus 4 times a times c. Make those a little better. There you go. Divide by 2a, or 2 times 1. Okay, all right, so now, oh, c's got a negative 1 in it. Sorry, guys, I missed that. Okay, so now when I multiply the inside here, I get 0 plus or minus the square root of 4 divided by 2. Well, the square root of 4 is 2, so I have 0 plus or minus 2 divided by 2. So now, I mean, you can rewrite it. If you really want to do 0 plus 2 divided by 2, you can do that, but really 2 divided by 2 is 1. And then it'd be the same thing here, 0 minus 2 divided by 2. Well, negative 2 divided by 2 is negative 1. And those are your two solutions. Okay, so from a height of 256 feet above a lake on a cliff, Mary throws a rock out over the lake. The height h of the rock, t seconds after Mary throws it, is represented by the equation. To the nearest tenth of a second, how long does it take the rock to reach the lake below? Hint, use h equals 0. So, I mean, they're telling you basically, guys, you're just going to take 0, right? And you're going to plug it in right there. Okay, and then you're using the quadratic to solve. So we've got 0 equals negative 16t squared plus 32t plus 256. All right, so quadratic. This is your a, right? A, b, and c. So x equals negative 32. So, right, the opposite of b, so it'd be negative 32 times 32 squared minus 4 times a times c. All divided by 2 times a, which is negative 16. All right, so I'm starting on this inside here. I'm going to tap that big guy into my calculator. So 32 squared minus 4 times negative 16 times 256. All right, and I've got x equals negative 32 plus or minus the square root of 17,408 over negative 32. All right, now I'm going to go ahead and plug that 17,408 into my calculator. All right, and I'm going to kind of move my work up here off to the side. So now I've got x equals negative 32 plus or minus. And when I square rooted that, I got 131.9 divided by negative 32. Okay, let's go ahead and break that up into our two different parts here. So I've got x equals negative 32 plus 131.9 divided by negative 32. And I've got negative 32 minus 131.9. I'm going to divide that by negative 32. Okay, all right, so negative 32 plus 131.9. So I end up with 99.9. Now I'm going to divide that by negative 32, and I'm going to end up with negative 3.1. Okay, on the second guy here, I've got negative 32 minus 131.9. So I end up with negative 163.9. All right, I'm going to divide by my negative 32. And I ended up with, negative 32. And I end up with x equals 5.1 when it's rounded. Now, since the question is how long, right? That's what this question is. How long does it take? So if I'm looking at these two answers, only one of them is going to make sense. You can't go negative time. Can't happen. So this right here, 5.1 seconds, is your answer. Okay. All right. Solve by factoring. Okay, so this is a good little review, solve by factoring. So let's go ahead and we're going to move that 3x over into the middle, right? So we get x squared minus 3x minus 10 equals 0. So now I'm looking for factors of negative 10 that get me negative 3. So 5 and 2 pop into my head, and then I'm going to make that 5 negative so that when I add them, I get a negative 3. So I have x minus 5, x plus 2 equals 0. Now set each factor equal to 0. And then solve. So I end up with x equals 5 and x equals negative 2. Okay, on this one, go ahead and set equal to 0 again. So I'm going to start by subtracting that 3 right to here. So I've got 4b squared plus 11b minus 3 equals 0. Okay, I'm going to start my list. 1 times 4, 2 times 2, 1 times 3. And what's going to happen is nothing's going to work here, so I'm going to go ahead and flip. So 4 times 1 and then 2 times 2. But again, I'm not going to check 2 times 2 because we just checked it. All right, so now if I look at this, 4 times 3 is 12. Oops, wrote that backwards, didn't I? 12. 1 times 1 is 1. And then to get an 11, I need to make this guy a negative. Okay? All right, so my combo here is 4, 1. So I have a 4b and a 1b. My backside is 1 and 3. It's equal to 0. Now when I multiply this 12, I want that to be positive, so I'm going to put the positive there and the negative there. Now go ahead and set each part equal to 0 and solve. So I'm going to add the 1 over and then divide and get 1/4. I'm going to subtract the 3 over and get negative 3. So I have 1/4 and negative 3. All right, on the next one here, this is pull a GCF. So I'm going to pull an n out and get n plus 8 equals 0. Now I'm just going to set each part equal to 0 and solve. So n equals 0 is done. I'm going to subtract the 8 on this one and get n equals negative 8. And those are your two solutions. All right, on this guy, this is different to squares. I can square root, I have subtraction, and I can square root. So I get 9x minus 1 and 9x plus 1 when I do that. Now set each factor equal to 0. And solve. So I'm going to add the 1 over and then divide and get 1/9. I'm going to subtract the 1 over and divide and get negative 1 over 9. And those are your two solutions. Okay. All right, going to page 3. All right, so I threw in a little bit of old review just to kind of get us thinking about some of this stuff. All right, so we're graphing a systems of equations. Okay, so first one here, I'm going to graph at negative 4. So put a point there on negative 4. Okay, and then it says slope of 2. So we're going to go up 2, right 1, up 2, right 1. Okay, and then do the best I can to draw a line here. Okay, and then on the second one there, I'm going to start at 2. because that's my b value. I have a slope of 1/2, so up 1, right 2, up 1, right 2. And then I'm going to go down to the left here, just get a few more points. Okay, I'm going to draw my line. And now remember, on this, we're trying to figure out where's it crossing. So it's crossing at the coordinate point, the coordinate point 4, 4, and that's your solution. Okay, number 13 here. All right, substitution. So we already have, remember we need an x equals or a y equals. We already have a y equals here, so we're just going to take this and plug it in for y. So I get 8x minus 8. In place of that y, put the negative 5x minus 15 equals 24. Now go ahead and distribute that negative 8 through. So I get 8x plus 40x. And then, let's see, 15 times 8 would be 120. So plus 120 equals 24. Okay, now let's go ahead and combine like terms. So 48x plus 120 equals 24. Let's subtract the 120 off. So I end up with negative 96 when I do that. And then 96 divided by 48 should give us, yep, x equals negative 2. Okay, now when you got that, remember, we got to then take this and plug this back in. So y equals negative 5 times negative 2 minus 15. So I end up with 10 minus 15, or y equals negative 5. So your coordinate point is negative 2, negative 5. Okay, on this one, you need something to match up. So what I'm going to do is multiply this by negative 2. So I'm going to get negative 6x, negative 12y equals 0. And then on the bottom, I didn't touch that, so I'm just recopying it. Okay, now when I'm looking here, you got to be careful. A lot of you are going to want to try to cancel out those 12s. Don't do that. Okay, you're going to cancel out those 6's, and you get negative 24y, right? Because you're putting them together. N equals negative 24, so when I divide, y equals 1. Now go ahead and take this and plug it back in. I'll plug it in the top, but it doesn't really matter. So you get 3x plus 6 times 1 equals 0. So 3x plus 6 equals 0. Subtract the 6 over and divide, and you end up with negative 2. So negative 2, 1 is your solution. Okay, let's go ahead and go to the last page here. A little bit of chapter 7 review. All right, so side by side, add your exponents up. So we're going to add the little guys, right? The big guys out front, we still multiply. So negative 2 times negative 1 is just positive 2. B's, I've got 5 of them. So side by side, add. Okay, 16, we're going to go ahead and drop that 2 in, right? But make sure we drop it into all 3 parts. So I've got 3 squared, x to the 8th. Remember, when we drop it in, we multiply. And then y to the 6th. Now go ahead and call 3 squared 9. X to the 8th, y to the 6th. And that's your answer. Okay, number 7. Okay, so keep in mind, if it's a negative, right, we remove the negative exponents. Okay, so I have got, if I take a look at this on my exponents here, I'm moving the u down. I have 1 and 3 u's already down there. So there's 4 u's down there, and I'm dropping another one. So now I've got 5 u's. The v's in this case cancel out. Remember, we are technically subtracting. Remember, we're taking 4 minus 4. When they're on different levels, we subtract. When they're on the same level, we add. And then on this guy, this front guy here, you do have to take 4 and divide it by 2. So 4 divided by 2 is 2. The 2 goes on top. And there's your solution. All right, and then this was a little review from right before we left. So we're going to go ahead and add and subtract these. So this one's a subtraction. So remember, on subtraction, we're going to go ahead and distribute that negative through to all 3 parts. Okay, so we're going to get negative 8n plus 4n squared and plus 6n to the 4th when we do that. Okay, so now just combine like terms. So I'm going to put my n to the 4th together because it does say standard form. So start with your biggest exponent. So I get 9n to the 4th. Then on the next one here, I've got 4n squared and negative 5n squared. So when I put those together, I get a minus 1n squared. And then on the next one here, I've got a 3n minus 8n. So I have a negative 5n. And that's your answer. Okay, on this guy, we're going to go ahead and add them up. So we're just combining like terms. So there is no other k to the fourth, so I'm going to start with 5k to the fourth. Again, always go to your biggest exponent first. Then if I go to the next guy, I got 6k squared, so plus 6k squared, because there's no other k squared. Now on my k's, I've got 4 and 1, so that would be 5k. And then if I look here, I've got 3 and 1 for 4, plus 4. And that's your standard form. Okay, so on this one, we're just multiplying. So I'm going to go ahead and push the 3n through and get 24n squared minus 3n. Can't put that together, so that's your answer. All right, and on the last one here, I'm going to FOIL this out. So I'm going to take 4 times 4 and get 16m squared minus 28m minus 24m and then plus 42 when I FOIL it. Now combine like terms in the middle. So I get 6m squared minus 52m plus 42. And that's your answer. And that concludes this answer key.